Hello everybody, this is Voodoo G, and in today's video we're going to take a look at Odin 2, a free subtractive wavetable synthesizer made by the Wave Warden. Much like Vember Audio's Surge, this is a free open source powerhouse synthesizer. What I mean by that is that it is a synthesizer that can create basically any sound you want in one instance. But unlike Surge, the design of Odin 2 is a lot simpler and it is not quite as powerful. If you are familiar with Propellerhead's Reason and the synthesizer Thor, then this will all seem very familiar to you. The layout of Odin 2 is very similar to that of Thor. We've got 3 oscillators going either into filter 1 or filter 2, or both. You can also route filter 1 right into filter 2, which then goes into the amplifier, and from there into filter 3 and the effects section. The intuitive routing options of this synthesizer are a major part of what makes it so powerful. Another major part is the extensive modulation matrix. You can modulate basically any parameter on the synthesizer using the modulation options. Speaking of which, you've got 4 envelopes and 4 LFOs. I should note that 2 of the envelopes are hardwired to the filter cutoff and the amplitude of the synthesizer. The last modulation option is an intuitive arpeggiator. All of these features certainly make this synthesizer powerful, but what really makes this synthesizer unique are the different oscillator modules you can choose from. Unlike with other synthesizers, you don't just select an oscillator waveform, but you select an entire oscillator module that completely changes the way the synthesizer generates sound. For instance, the wavetable oscillator lets you select between 35 different wavetables. The FM oscillator lets you do frequency modulation between any of the synthesizer's available waveforms. In the same spirit, we also have a phase modulation oscillator. There's a standard analog oscillator which lets you select between the 4 basic waveforms: saw wave, square wave, triangle wave and sine wave. There's a multi-oscillator that lets you create a unison effect from any of the available oscillator types, a chiptune oscillator that creates 8-bit type waves, a wave draw oscillator that lets you draw your own waveform. In that same vein, we also have a chip draw oscillator, which is basically the wave draw oscillator but quantized, and a spectral oscillator, which works like an additive graph synthesizer. Last but certainly not least is the vector oscillator, which lets you morph between 4 different oscillator waves using an XY pad. As for the filters, we have multiple different filter types we can select. We've got your standard low-pass, bandpass, high-pass filters, but also some filters modeled after analog devices, a comb filter, a formant filter, and a ring modulator. As you can see, with all of these options, this synthesizer is extremely powerful. The only section that is a bit lacking at the moment is the effect section, because we only have a delay, phaser, chorus and flanger. We don't have any distortion effects or any reverb. Though in all honesty, that's not even a big deal. Alright, so let's talk a bit more about the modulation section. As mentioned before, we've got 4 envelopes and 4 LFOs. The envelopes are all standard ADSR envelopes, but the LFOs are a little bit more interesting. There's a whole barrel of choices for LFO waveforms. You can even pick the wave draw oscillator shapes from oscillator 1, 2 and 3. And while the synthesizer doesn't offer an MSEG, you still have a lot of options to shape the sound using modulation. The modulation matrix works in the classic way. You select your modulation source and your modulation destination, and then you set the value in between. As for modulation macros, you've got an XY controller and the standard pitch and mod wheel. And lastly, you have a standard 16-step arpeggiator. Using the knobs above each step can modulate a parameter whenever the arpeggiator reaches that point. And with that, we're basically done. There are of course a few more things you could do with the synthesizer if we were to play with the amplifier and stuff, but I'm going to let you figure that out on your own. Overall, Odin 2 is a really powerful synthesizer, and I am once again a little bit baffled that this thing is completely free. And with that, we've reached the end of the video. You can find the link to the synthesizer in the video description, you can click here to watch my playlist Music Production on a Budget, and you can click here to listen to some of my songs. Thank you for watching and have an awesome day.